The Jenny's Revenge by Simon Wilson. Chapter 1. Jenny, a name or term used by pirates and sailors to describe a prostitute. As Anne lay in the mud and filth behind the cabin boy, one of Port Royal's smaller but still popular taverns come brothel, she wondered how it had all gone so terribly wrong. She'd always considered herself to be a good judge of character, able to spot and steer clear from those of a mind to hurt her, or not pay for services rendered. This latest Tom had been different. He looked well kept, almost clean, and mostly sober, with an innocent-looking face that was baby-like in its appearance. At the time, Anne had considered that he looked quite naive compared to most of the patronage that frequented the cabin boy. She quickly checked her appearance, ensuring that a suitable amount of her ample breasts were on show, and her mousy brown hair tumbled down her front to frame them. Then she approached him, looking up at him with doe-brown eyes, saying all the usual words of a woman in her line of work, and when he looked interested in taking things further, offered to take him upstairs to one of the rooms so that they could come to an accord over price and do business. It was at that point that the Tom had gotten panicked and said that he needed air. As Anne watched him leave the tavern, she couldn't help but feel a bit sorry for him, deciding that it must be his first time. That being said, she didn't want to lose his patronage, so quickly followed him out into the night air. In another lifetime, Anne rather fancied that she could have been an actress in one of those fancy stage shows. She and many of the other girls in her line of work often had to play a role in order to secure some coin. The sad truth was that it was often the best way to get through many of the vulgar things her clients wanted her to do. It was a lot easier, after all, if you could say it was happening to somebody else instead of you. For this particular Tom, she decided to use a motherly approach with lots of reassurance. "What's the matter, love?" she asked, using the same tone of voice many mothers did when a child was crying. "Don't be embarrassed. We all had a first time. You come upstairs with me, and I'll make it real special for you." As she spoke, Anne cozied up to the man. She was shorter than most and tiny compared to him, trying to win him over by pressing her breasts against him and gazing wantonly up at him with her hazel eyes. As she did so, she could feel a real tension in him. The muscles in his arms and back were taut as a hawser line at high tide. Though his next words made her think she'd won him over, she was soon to discover that she had made a terrible mistake. "You sound like my mother, miss," he said, taking Anne's arm in his hand. "I hated my mother." Anne looked up into the Tom's eyes. The smooth, baby-like features that had first drawn her attention were now gone, replaced with rage and hatred. "I hated my mother!" he screamed in her face. Anne started to struggle. She knew she was in serious trouble and needed to get away, but his grip was vice-like from many years at sea, and he easily overpowered her. Looking around, he saw the back alley where the tavern threw all of its rubbish and emptied its chamber pots. With a wicked grin, he dragged Anne into the darkness. "Come on, missy. I'm going to show you just what I did to my mother." His voice a low growl in the gloom. The last thing Anne could clearly remember was the man laughing, high-pitched and childlike, before darkness swallowed her. Thankfully for Anne, the human mind has a built-in defense mechanism that automatically blocks out traumatic events, but as she came to, it was evident that disgusting and violent acts had been heaped upon her. There was not an inch of Anne's body that did not hurt, inside and out. The Tom's attack had been savage. She had been bitten in several places, her arms, her neck, her breasts, as if she had been attacked not by a man, but by a wild animal. As if in sympathy for her plight, the moonlight that shone weakly into the alley now gave everything a soft edge, but Anne could still see that her clothing had been torn from her body. The light was also enough to show that the puddle she sat in came not from the contents of any chamber pot, but instead flowed from between her legs, testament of the depravity of the man with the baby face. She knew that she should be grateful that she had no recollection of the events that had befallen her, but she knew that his seemingly innocent features would haunt her for the rest of her days. Anne knew that she needed to move, as sitting in the filth of the alley could, if it hadn't already, lead to infection. Her body, though, would not obey her, so badly was the damage bestowed upon it. She couldn't even muster the energy to weep or cry for help, believing that all hope was lost and that she would die lying in the mud and excrement of a whorehouse. Shadow fell upon her, and through swollen eyes she could just make out several blurred outlines. Anne presumed then that the Tom had returned, bringing a few of his shipmates to finish off the job that he had started. But as she sank into merciful unconsciousness, she was pleasantly surprised to hear a soft voice telling that all would soon be right. End of Chapter 1. The Jenny's Revenge by Simon Wilson is available on Amazon.